I am looking for a couple of great bounty hunters.
This is the MandoMullet, a deep dive into Star Wars, with your host, the Lethal Mullet, and here is my co-pilot.
Hey there, everyone. This is Lee, Norwegian Smooth Fillingsness. Adam, our captain, is the Hustle. I, my friend, Sam the Muscle. The two of us are definitely going to get this job done.
You can find us weekly here on the Lethal Mullet Network. May the Force be with you. G'day, mate. How you going? This is the Lethal Mullet. One of the only. Adam O'Brien comes to you live from Quinlan's Cantina in the Gold Coast of Australia for this brand new show. Here, and of course, the new Lethal Mullet Network, radio, whatever we're going to call this, because this is a premiere. We're recording it before then, folks. And, of course, you know that I'm a massive Star Wars fan and really enjoying The Mandalorian. So we decided to come up with a show here where we can chat about that with dear friends of the show and of the network, of course. And we're going to have a regular co-host joining us on episodes as well. And that is, of course, your pal of mine, Lee Fillingsness of Blood of Kings. He's been looking for somewhere to chat Star Wars, and he'll be joining us on several of the episodes forward. So this being the premiere, I thought we'd talk about a little bit about my love of Star Wars and some of the other stuff in Star Wars that I've done, podcasts and otherwise. We'll go through some of that. Also look at The Mandalorian. We'll look at the finale of The Mandalorian, but don't worry, folks, we're going to go into a bit of a deep dive on this show. Weekly, we're going to go right back to the start of Season 1 and talk about what made that first season such a hugely impactful one for us, where we all said, this is the way. And of course, it was the way. It was way for TV, and a hell of a TV show it is on this new streaming platform of Disney+. It's fantastic. And of course, what I love about this resurgence, I suppose, of the bounty hunter area of Star Wars, it's made my passion for going back to some of the Legends material, the old expanded universe, and enjoying some of those stories, whereas the KW Jedi books, or looking at some of the just the stories in and around Han Solo and Lando Calrissian, which of course Boba Fett in particular was a big part of that story. So we'll go into that in later episodes on this here show too. But the big thing is to enjoy Star Wars, enjoy our fandom, and the big thing is also chatting about it, what we enjoy. But before we get into that tonight, here's how you can find this show and more like it. I hope you're enjoying all the shows on the Lethal Mullet Network. You can find, of course, the MandoMullet on all social platforms. At The Lethal Mullet on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also find this show and the other Lethal shows on, of course, Fandom Podcast Network as well. That is fpnet.podbean.com. May the Force be with you, and enjoy your Star Wars. Now it's time for the news here on MandoMullet, as we give you all the latest Star Wars news that's fit to print. Alrighty, mate, here we go. Here's the news. High Republic has begun its way across the stars with, of course, the first novel, Light of the Jedi, written by Charles Soule. And we'll be looking at that in our very first full episode, and it's an amazing looking book so far. The story, or at least the blurb that I've read, because I don't want to spoil too much for myself yet, folks, looks really, really interesting. And again, this is about a time when the Jedi were at their absolute peak, and before the Dark Times came in, before the Phantom Menace, and because this is a time where they're really starting to spread out and, if not, explore more of the galaxy. So that's what really interested me about what they're doing here, which was, of course, Project Luminous. We first heard about this back in, of course, Star Wars Celebration time, and there was a lot of speculation about what this would be about. And here it is, folks. We're here now, the High Republic, which we know about now over the last year or so of getting information from, of course, the correct sources from StarWars.com. We now have this amazing series with, of course, a number of different creators coming in, writers, and really come out with a story as big as, obviously, the New Jedi Order, Fate of the Jedi, of course, all that sort of thing, where we've got a bit of a multimedia event, if you like. Other things that we've always talked about are things like, of course, Shadows of the Empire, which is one of my favourites. And you can actually find a chat recently on the latest episode, I believe it's episode 56 and 57 of The Fantha from Down Under. Of course, I'm the Australian correspondent for The Fantha from Down Under. You can go and check out that over there at fanthatracks.com, where we chat to Kevin and Kyle, the co-creators of the Phantom Podcast Network, and we chat about Han Solo in particular, but also, of course, Shadows of the Empire, which is an interesting story too, because that being such a big multimedia event, it was also about, of course, the likes of Han Solo not being in the story. It was about everyone around him trying to rescue him between Empire Strikes Back and, of course, Return of the Jedi. It was a great little one too. But what I really enjoyed about going through that was, getting a sort of a feel for where we're going here. But the only character we really know from this era in particular is Yoda. Because Yoda is obviously alive at this time, a couple hundred years younger, and no doubt he'll be a part of the council. That's without a doubt. I'm sure he's been part of the council for a good couple of hundred years before we get to him in Phantom Menace. So he's a lot wizened by then. So maybe he is a little bit more reckless, like he always used to say Obi-Wan Kenobi and, of course, Anakin was. And Luke, he goes, "You are reckless," and maybe he should have said, "Reckless you are." Who knows? But it's an interesting time. We've got, the gamuts all there. Like it's such a huge array of characters from all walks of life. We've also got new bad guys, new villains, basically, that are from a really different sort of take. Look like a cross between pirates, Vikings, invaders, basically. So it kind of, when I first looked at it, kind of has a feel of, I suppose, the Yuuzhan Vong without being it straight up Yuuzhan Vong. It's a different, thing that the Republic has not been up against before. So that's what's going to make it an interesting read too. So that's on the shelves so far in Australia. I've heard that you can get a lot of the other books in other areas, but here in Brisbane and the Gold Coast, only seen a lot of the Jedi so far. So it'll be interesting. And I do want to see where these Marvel comics are going with it too. Again, it all combines together to make a overarching, amazing story. So can't wait to get in that too. Now, the other news is, obviously, we've just had the finale of Mandalorian about a week and a half ago. And, wow. Wow, folks, it was amazing. I know all of you out there have probably watched it already. So I'm going to go in with full... Well, I wouldn't say... I'm not going to spoil everything, but I will say the care that's being taken to put this series together and to tie into things. And I think that's the real... talent and skill of Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau as well. And this is the sort of care that they were taking with things like Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. These bigger series which, had characters like Darth Maul come back. Characters like Ahsoka Tano now in live action. And it's interesting to see that they're not only just putting them in there, but they're giving them the right sort of story points. They're also trying to, obviously, show the effects that the things like the war have had on some of these characters as well. And we're really getting some great talent in there. Obviously Katie Sackhoff has actually come to play the live action incarnation of her character, which was fantastic. We've got the return of Boba Fett, this time played by Tamura Morrison in the actual armor. Obviously he only voiced him in Empire Strikes Back because of obviously that was played originally by the late Jeremy Bulloch. And of course we have the sad news of his passing, so my thoughts go out to Jeremy's family. He's always been somebody that was well thought of by fans, especially at events and stuff like that, particularly by the Fantha Tracks team. They've always said that he was one of the greats when it came to being around fandom and enjoying just what Star Wars offered, I think, is the big thing. Also, what's great is we get that with Fennec Shand coming back from the first season, which we kind of got an idea of that she had been rescued by, or who knows, taken prisoner by Boba Fett in the original season when they did that episode on Tatooine. And it's great. It's fantastic. The scenes alone on Tython, which I was really hoping for a temple, folks, or something, because I'm a huge fan of the Legends material of Dark Horse when they went to that planet in particular. There was a really interesting period of the Star Wars expanded universe, and got to see the ships that used to pick up the Force sensitives that were taken to train as Jedi, or I don't know how to pronounce that. Hopefully I pronounced that right. And of course Tython, which pretty much if you weren't Force sensitive, it was very hard to live on that planet and survive. So again, very interesting era, and I like that. But yeah, we get to see some of these things that are coming from that verse, the legendary stories, and coming to life. Obviously, we got links to Thrawn in this, so there's the hope that we maybe get in another series or maybe another season Thrawn somewhere. I would say most likely you're going to see it in an Ahsoka series, which is the other bit of news, folks. Not only have we had that, plus before we get to that, obviously the return of Luke Skywalker was fantastic. So I'll just say that. But we've also got the information that we're getting an entire series of different series. Everything from the Rangers of the New Republic, Acolytes, which looks great. Obviously we've got Andor, Obi-Wan. There's just so many to go through. And we will go through it in a bit more detail in another episode. But it's just so much information coming at once. And so much amazing stuff that I think everyone can get a bit of an idea out of. Obviously, we've got the Taika Waititi movie that's coming, which had a very interesting typeface on the font when they put that up on the screen. We also got Droids, which is, can't tell whether it's going to be live action or not. There's just so much there. Rangers of the New Republic, I believe, was the other one too. So again, there's a lot coming, folks, and of course an X-Wing Rogue Squadron film. Wow, it's all coming. I can't wait, and I'm sure you'll agree with me. It's a great time to be a Star Wars fan. There's just so much material. Now it's time to go down to the MandoMullet Cantina for some amazing meals, amazing beverages, and amazing Star Wars chat. Let's head down there. Alright, here we are. Welcome to the MandoMullet Cantina. Couldn't come up with a better name than that. But here, of course, we're going to chat a little bit about my Star Wars fan and what I've enjoyed over the years and what I continue to enjoy. So I've been a huge Star Wars fan from back in the old days. I remember, obviously, probably my earliest memories watching Star Wars on TV in Brisbane, in Queensland, Australia. And, seeing it on the old CRT TV, these little square TV, and you're missing, obviously, half of what George intended us to see, being in such a small screen. But that was my huge opening to Star Wars. I never got to see it in the cinemas. I was too young for that at the time. But it's also the reruns that we got to see. And growing up, watching it on TV on a Friday night, I think it came out usually about twice a year on TV in Australia. That was when I really got into, enjoying that era. That Battlestar Galactica was huge on TV at the time. We had that. We had $6 Million Man. We had 18. All these great shows. Knight Rider. You name it. The Bionic Woman. All those huge shows were so formative at the time. But with Star Wars, it always ruled the roost when it came to what I enjoyed. And it was everything when it came to the merchandise. As a kid, getting I think it was the Empire Strikes Back era of stuff is when I really started getting into it, because I was obviously too young in 1977 when I was born. So it was after that I got into some of the bigger parts of merchandising, and obviously rewatching these great reruns, and plus all of the behind the scenes, which was shown on a Sunday afternoon a couple of times a year. And we always look in the TV guides for when the making of The Empire Strikes Back was there. And I still swear to this day, we've seen some of that material on Blu-rays from the past. One of them was the special effects one with Mark Hamill. Another one was I think it was the New Hope one, where we got to see R2-D2 and 3PO sort of holding a bit of a fan gathering sort of thing. But yeah, that's the sort of formative years. I remember everything from the cereal boxes to the ice creams, the paddle pops, the juice, the cards, and of course then to Kenner, which I just went nuts with, as you know the parents of most kids would do. Christmas came along and you got nothing but Kenner. We got Kenner, Star Wars coming out our ears, and we also had, obviously, to a lot of the great stuff, which I really remember even more, was the Marvel comics. We got a lot of those, the adaptations of Empire Strikes Back, and the colouring in books. Even Splinter of the Mind's Eye back in the day. It's just great to sort of, I think, have an extended universe, as limited as it was in the 80s, and it was great. Even the original novel, the ghost-written one by, obviously, Alan Dean Foster, with the great little pages in the middle with the pictures from the film. That was always what captured my imagination of Star Wars. But it was over the years of continually getting into those things. My first figure was C-3PO. I got from a Coles. It was a Coles supermarket in Sunnybank in Queensland, Australia. And we kept going back to that because they were getting the harder to find figures. And you know, whatever it was at the time, 4 or 5 years old, I think got Luke with a great little projected blade, the one that used to come up the side of the arm. And I was wondering why it wasn't blue. And then continually started to pick up figures. And then vehicles, the X-Wing. And I got not only the big X-Wing, but we got the small one too, which came from, I think it was the Micro Collection, where it was the battle damage one. Always enjoyed that one, and I got a couple of years later it's one of my favourite vehicles. The Snowspeeder was always a fun one to have, and particularly the Micro one was well detailed for the time, and you had those little die-cast metal figures. So I always had the vehicle versions of that, and I used to catch up with some friends from school who had the Micro Collection sets, from the Bespin set, the obviously the carbon freeze chamber and all that sort of thing too, which had the little action bits where you could put the figure in it and it would become the carbon freezing hunt down below. That was a lot of fun. But it was also coming together as pals and friends do. They bring their toys over to each other's places, and you would play with the X-Wing, and then they would have the Millennium Falcon. So it was interesting, they never had the X-Wing, but they had the Millennium Falcon, which is a more expensive toy at the time. I still think it's probably the best edition of the Millennium Falcon. It's kind of like the Holy Grail, even though there's been improvements in some of the ones, the Hasbro ones since. I think the Legacy Collection is still probably the be-all and end-all when it comes to Millennium Falcons. So yeah, a lot of that stuff was great. Then we, obviously, with Return of the Jedi came out, there was some great, I think, literature at the time. There's great making of magazines. There were these things that usually for us here in Australia came from publishers from the UK. So we had a Return of the Jedi magazine, which even had the Blue Harvest stuff in there too. Kind of let you know that, hey, we know that you fans know that what Blue Harvest really is. Horror beyond the imagination. And of course we were all keen to see what Return of the Jedi was going to be like. And I remember my mother taking me to the Hoyts cinema in, of course, Brisbane City in what we call the Queen Street Mall. And we watched Return of the Jedi, and she said, "It's just too damn loud, Adam. It's too loud. It's just too much. Too loud. Too loud." So forever, whenever we went to see movies, she would not want to see the action movies and all that sort of stuff. But it was years later we went and saw, obviously as kids still, films like Dick Tracy and stuff like that. And she said, "It's even louder than that Jedi one." But yeah, it was an experience to have, obviously. And as the years went on, between that period of the around about 85, because we still had the Ewok films, and a big shout out to our dear pal Eric Walker out there. Of course, the original Mace Tawani, started in, of course, Caravan of Courage, and then we had also, of course, Battle for Endor. These two great flicks. I really enjoy those. Even today, they're great for what they are. And I have to say, too, at the time we had the Droids cartoon in a limited release, and around about 85 here, or 86, I can't remember the year that we got it. But I remember travelling to Sydney and was staying at the grandparents' place, and it came out on a Saturday morning and a Sunday morning. And we were able to watch pretty much 2 episodes back to back. So they had the whole seasons. And I really enjoyed it. I was hoping that we got merchandise from it, because we didn't get it. It never happened here, particularly here in Australia. That'd be something to actually look up maybe in a further episode, what happened with that series. We also had, obviously, the Ewok series as well, which came to TV. And I remember that in about 87 here, which is when, of course, the dark times had hit as far as popularity here in Star Wars circles for fans in Australia. So after that, obviously, little bits of sporadic Star Wars here and there. It wasn't really until Heir to the Empire came out that there started to be a little bit of a resurgence, at least. We had the Bantam novels hitting the shores of Australia, and wow. Timothy Zahn had really, I think, kicked off a new era of Star Wars. Not only that, but Dark Horse Comics getting the license off Marvel and doing things like Dark Empire and the runs of Star Wars that they did. And it went all over the place. And, of course, we had so many different avenues for Star Wars due to that. Then we had, of course, Michael Stackpole doing the X-Wing series, the X-Wing Rogue Squadron, which was just an amazing series. Probably one of my favourite series to read when it comes to something outside of the Jedi. And give us characters like Corran Horn, was one of my favourites when it comes to the Legends line. And that also, of course, gave us different multimedia coming out. So obviously Shadows of the Empire came up in the mid-90s after that too. We got, obviously, too, the build-up towards the prequels around 95, 96 when we got the news and newspapers. It wasn't on the web then, folks. It was all over the place. But we used to really dive into whatever little bit of skerrick of news we'd find about, of course, the fandom. And at that time it was interesting too, because we had CD-ROMs and stuff like that coming out. We had a lot of video games, thanks to LucasArts. So we had, obviously, the Rebel Assault 2. We had also X-Wing and X-Wing versus TIE. All these great ones, obviously, too, Dark Forces and Jedi Knight. This whole avenue of where you become a part of the adventure. And that was part of some of the stuff I enjoyed. Although we never had a PC that was powerful enough, a computer powerful enough to play these games properly. So it wasn't until I got the cartridge machines, which we had a few of. And one of those ones, of course, was the Super Nintendo. And, of course, we got the greatest, I'm going to say, folks, this is the greatest game invented. And not just Star Wars. Because it really is, still to this day, one of the most playful games, but tough. Oh, you've been coughing up my words here, folks, sorry. Because they are tough. LucasArts games were not easy. As much of a button smasher as I was back in the day, when it came to those games, they were hard. But they were rewarding. And of course, this is a side-scrolling shoot 'em up and platformer. And a hell of a game too, because it also had cutscenes where you'd also move into, being on the land speeder as a vehicle travelling through, obviously, Tatooine and the Jundland Wastes. You also had scenes where you were doing the Death Star trench run in an X-Wing fighter, and of course behind the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. So there's all that sort of interactivity in a cartridge machine in Super Star Wars, Super Empire Strikes Back, and of course Super Return of the Jedi. Still to this day, have the sort of fun I think that the Lego games definitely have and definitely emulate, but I still think they may one-up them when it comes to just the action and fun. And it uses a skerrick of the amount of memory that you would need to run. But also after that we had, obviously, on the next format, which was a Nintendo 64, the best game around, Shadows of the Empire. And again, too, kind of did the same. There were scenes where you did first-person shooter, and then outside of that too, you were flying vehicles, and that was set in around, of course, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Amazing game. Then, of course, we got all the books through that too. We also had a line of Jedi books looking at the training of course, of Luke's Jedi Academy. And that is, of course, by the amazing author and friend of mine, Kevin J. Anderson. This is a series that I think, in particular, the Jedi Academy ones gave us kind of a sense of what can happen to a youth that's, close to the power of Darth Vader or vice versa, and still able to draw the line where he could go the dark side or come back. But for whatever reason, still that sort of power is hard to maintain and filter that balance. So what's interesting too is Kip Duron, one of my favourite characters in all of the Legends material, was one of those characters who eventually became a hero. But, was finding his way with Han Solo. It's an interesting story because it's a little bit like when Rey is picked up by Han in Force Awakens. Same thing sort of happens when, of course, Han and Chewie pick up Kip Duron and lead him to, of course, Luke. So interesting sort of tie-in, very similar story. But again, that was a great series, and of course we got the Sun Crusher and material like that too. Same period, we had Tales of the Jedi start. This amazing Dark Horse series, which I still love to this day, folks. Absolutely brilliant. And, I don't know if we'll ever see a TV series set in this, but it would be an interesting era to sort of dive into. You still have Jedi, you still have the Sith, but everything's a little bit more, how can I say, a cross between Lord of the Rings and Conan the Barbarian. Technology's there, but it's not quite refined. You don't have all the hyperspace stuff at that time in some of those stories too. But also some of the ships of that era, the Jedi ships, in particular the one that Ulick Qel-Droma and his team use, is just an amazing vessel. And again, those designs that Dark Horse were working on were just breathtaking. Dear friends of mine that are designers as well in the industry always look back to Tales of the Jedi in particular. Is a fun time for exploration of where technology came from in the Star Wars universe. So we had all that material. Then we had the prequels come, and I really got into, I think at that time, the collecting, a really big time. I remember, of course, we had our version of Force Friday, where the first thing I bought was the STAP, the Trade Federation droid on his speeder, which was basically a stand-up vessel with the little cannons on the top. And that was a great piece from Hasbro. But after that, we had one of these days where you could go and pick up everything. I still remember the day walking through, it was a Toys R Us in Macrobat in Brisbane, Australia. And it was at night time, a couple of weeks before the movie came out, I believe. And you were able to pick up all the figures, which I got just about everybody except for, I think, Anakin and might have been, I think at the time, Jar Jar was hard to find. Because Jar Jar, at that time, there's only a few figures out on the shelves. So I got Qui-Gon, I got Obi-Wan, I got pretty much all the first run figures, Anakin and Padme, Darth Maul, and I think that's all we were able to get. And it had that interesting little chip that you would basically put the figure on top of, and if phrases from the film would come through. And who knows if they were actually phrases from the film or just voice actors' interpretations. But it was great. And then the vehicles too, so the Naboo N1 Starfighter, we got that. Got a lot of the Trade Federation droid ships. And then the pod racers too. The two, there's a Sebulba and obviously two Anakins. And they were great pieces for the time. All that stuff now in storage. And hope to get a big enough house and show all that stuff out on shelves again one day. But that really cemented my time. I was really getting into the series. And then, of course, we had New Jedi Order starting up with Vector Prime, which really cemented a darker time for Star Wars. A real challenge for the Jedi. And unfortunately, the loss of Chewbacca. But it really tested Han, tested Leia, and obviously Luke, and all the heroes we'd been known to that time. So it was an interesting run of stories, which really, I think, cemented the multi-book overarching storylines that kind of thing we're used to today. And multiple series outside of Star Wars have started doing that, big thing, whether it's in fantasy or science fiction. You get to see that across. A good notable one of that would be the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey, which is, set it within our own universe, but, uses that huge overarching theme. It's a massive story and has a live-action TV show of its own, too. But that's really where I started to branch out and collect just about everything. I tried to collect anything I saw Star Wars at the time, T-shirts as well, and all that sort of stuff. And I enjoyed the prequels, I really did. I think, Phantom Menace wasn't everyone's cup of tea. It was... definitely a different film at the time. But we still have to this day the greatest lightsaber battle put to film. And the work that went into that, whether it's from Liam Neeson, Ray Park, and Ewan McGregor, and of course Nick Gillard, who put those together, they're still the finest bits of swordplay I've seen in a Star Wars film. And the speed that was at, all that sort of stuff. Who knows, with the High Republic stuff, I hope we get to see some of that in any of the live-action ventures they try and do within that era. Then we got Attack of the Clones, which I didn't quite like as much as The Phantom Menace, but I did like the Obi-Wan detective story and where we went with that too, and just the ideas that George was starting to bring in here. Obviously, the clones was the big thing, and we always wondered what the Clone Wars was. After, of course, Ben Kenobi had mentioned those in Tatooine in his house, where things went, how did it all come to pass, and just who was the senator from Naboo, and of course wrapping up with Revenge of the Sith. But the thing I celebrated so much for myself as a fan back then was just being in the moment, that 9 years or so of just constant Star Wars, in between the years of those productions. And I always think that even now they should really go back to, which they kind of have, 3 years between movies. Not only does it give it time to finance those movies, get them together, concept them the right way, but it gives fans a bit of a breather. And, they get to enjoy what they're doing. And I think that's why, even with some of the newer material, there's just so much info coming at us that I think we take it for granted now. It's a great time to be a Star Wars fan because of that, because we didn't have that back in the day. And then also the series in between, the Genndy Clone Wars series. His series was this short sort of micro series of the Clone Wars. And I enjoyed both series of the Clone Wars, don't get me wrong, but I really, at this time, was at art college, and Genndy's style comes from Samurai Jack, obviously. Such an amazing style, and really suited, I think, to the kind of interplanetary fighting that Anakin was doing. There's some great stuff, obviously, on Yavin, on some of those scenes, and too with the Clone Troopers, the bounty hunter stuff, and that was done in that too. That series was fun, and of course we got a second volume of that led straight into Revenge of the Sith. So it's an amazing time to be a fan. And then, of course, with the wrap-up of Revenge of the Sith, we all thought that was the end. Of course, it was not. There was more to come. So that's it for my channel and fandom for now at that time. And we'll talk about more in another episode of where I went with fandom and collecting everything and just my thoughts on it. I think it's interesting. We all enjoy parts of Star Wars and the stuff that comes in and around it, and the things that we collect are not just novelties. These are things that become a part of your life, things that we enjoy, the music. There's a whole episode in itself. And I think we forget that this is not only is it entertainment. I think it influences us in so many ways, but it influences the enjoyment of our lives too, because it's something that we love. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the MandoMullet, a deep dive into the lore of Star Wars and, of course, of the Mandalorian. I'm your host, Adam O'Brien. You can catch us each week here chatting Star Wars. You can also catch us on social media at The Lethal Mullet on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Don't forget to catch our other shows, the Lethal Mullet podcast, every Monday here on the channel. Also, you'll find Making Treks, a Star Trek fan podcast, twice a month here on, of course, our Trek Tuesdays. And you'll also find the Mullet Guild, a look at Dune, coming back to the network very, very soon as we chat Frank Herbert's amazing universe of Dune as we lead towards October 2021 when we have the release of the Denis Villeneuve Part 1, Dune. Amazing film which is going to cinemas, has been confirmed. Catch all of this and more on, of course, this channel, the Lethal Mullet Network, folks. We'll catch you then here in the one place, same time, to enjoy Star Wars on the MandoMullet podcast. We'll catch you then, and may the Force be with you.
doesn't have to. That's it. You killed Hajinan.